Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to Sports Tonight. I'm sports producer Scott Pennyman. My guy Fred is in here. It's Thursday,
Scott.
right? It's a Thursday thing with Fred.
What's up? It was a Monday thing too for me, but Thursday
That's
back
true.
again. Happy to be here. Yeah.
That's
what
true.
are we talking about tonight? Looking forward to getting into it.
Hey, look, so we got a lot to cover. Of course, obviously, it's, when you're in, we're going to talk some NBA basketball, right?
Get that down the list.
That's because you're Mr. Basketball, a.k.a. Freddie Buckets, right? I mean, we're
Yeah.
just talking basketball before we started.
Let's
So,
go.
but first, let's talk some MLB, as tonight they will be announcing the All-Star starters for the All-Star game, and there's some Braves that really have a good opportunity, about 3 or 4 Braves that really have a real opportunity of being named starters in the All-Star game. One for sure, Ronald Acuna Jr., he's already set to start just because he's the leading vote getter in the National League. Other guys are right there, too. You have Orlando Arcia. You have Sean Murphy, who's in the running. You have Michael Harris, who has a pretty good chance to start. Look, when you have that many guys who have an excellent chance to start in the All-Star game, it says something about your baseball team. It says a lot because the Braves are, right now, as far as winning percentage, tied for the best record in the major league.
Right.
So I guess this is a byproduct of their success.
Absolutely, right? Well, when you have that many guys in the conversation, you better have a good record, or something else is really wrong with your with your team, your organization. So they have the stats, they have the stars, and they're going to have a bunch of guys in the All-Star game and probably multiple starters. I mean, Acuna's season is just bananas. That's what I was looking at while you were setting this up.
MVP like.
I mean, it's crazy. 331, 19 homers, 36 stolen bases. So if he gets hot, I mean, he could 35-70 or 40-70 is not out of the realm of possibility as far as home runs and stolen bases go. Because the stolen bases, let's face it, that's easier to get, right? So if he wanted to do 40-70, the 40 is going to be the harder part. Anytime he gets on, he can just say, well, we're going to run a little bit more in the second half of the season. But super impressive for him, so far. So and then the other guys you mentioned, Olson's up there at the top of the league in terms of home runs, and a bunch of other guys having great seasons.
Yeah, so when you look at it, Acuna's already guaranteed a spot in the All-Star game.
Yeah.
When you look at the American League, Ohtani, right? I mean, who's going to argue with him
Yeah.
being a starter in the All-Star game? I mean, he may be the best overall player in baseball, right? I mean,
He may be. I was, hearing something podcast. They were talking a little bit about his stats, and baseball for me is like, I'm not paying as close attention as I did back in the newspaper days. I'm dating myself a little bit.
Same
like
here.
It used to be you just sit there at breakfast and just look at box scores,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
I don't get the paper anymore. So I guess I could do it on my computer, but I just don't as much. But it's ridiculous what Shohei's doing this year. One of the best pitchers in the league, one of the best hitters in the league. And the skills needed for those two things are so much different. So
Right.
it's not like you're a cornerback and a wide receiver or something in the NFL, right? It's not like you're a two-way player in any other sport. It's like you're almost playing two different sports to be able to be that good at each of those things. So his numbers are really incredible. I don't know who's got the current home run lead, but he's up there, right? With
sure.
Olson. So it's crazy. It's crazy to think he could be. If he does this for a few more years, Scott, is he the best baseball player in history?
Wow.
If he does this for a few more
woo.
years, well, how are you going to be in the Cy Young conversation and then in the MVP conversation every single year and not be the best to ever do it?
You mean the best? Ooh, see, that's hard, man. I mean, look, I mean, I'm not going to say no, but I also don't want to sound too prisoner of the moment and say best player
Well, I'm
ever.
projecting too.
All
so
right,
I'm not
so
saying right now.
So here's the thing with that. So,
Who's better?
okay. So this is where it gets sticky when it comes to baseball, right? Because I grew up during the steroid era. So there were a lot of guys who, I mean, Barry Bonds, right? I mean, he would be, if I was to look, even before steroids for him, I mean, he won like 4 or 5 MVPs.
So I was going to put, I was going to put Barry Bonds as the best guy to play Major League Baseball in the last 40 years.
Okay.
So that would have been mine. Even with the whole steroids,
Sure.
there's no doubt he did them and whatever. But everybody was doing them.
Right, and everybody didn't hit 762 homers. So
yeah, everyone was doing them, and nobody else was hitting 73 home runs
Right.
and walking 200 times and having an on-base percentage above 500 and all the other stuff that he did, and not seeing anything to hit. But when he did get something to hit, hitting a home run.
Yeah. Right.
So that's a name. But really, when you think about it, I mean, you can go way. That's the thing about baseball. You can go way back.
So far back.
You can go
man.
back to Babe Ruth. You can go back to a lot of different things. But in today's day and age, with the way guys pitch, and then the way pitchers are generally protected and specialized,
That's
for
true.
Ohtani to do both things so well is incredible to me.
Yeah, I mean, so to me, that's where your argument is kind of at, right? I mean, that's kind of where it does have some validity because,
Yeah.
I mean, who could pitch like him and who could, just play the game just all around like him? And he's
Yeah.
certainly a phenom. How much is he going to be worth once it's time for him to get paid?
Yeah.
I mean, what's the dollar amount on what he's able to do as far as pitching, as far as a hitter?
I think it probably starts.
No,
I'm
start
going to
at
say with a
400 million?
6. I'm going to say it starts with a 6.
Woo.
It's going to be 600 million. I
Wow.
think it's more than half a billy. It's crazy. He's 28 years old. So baseball is a game that he could still be really effective at 37, 38 years old. 12 years, 600 million.
Wow, I mean, we've seen those contracts, though. They almost rarely, especially when it gets to the end of that contract.
It's absolutely not going to work out. He's
Right.
going to be 38 years old. Some team's going to be paying him 65 million a year, but
Right.
that's a problem for 20,
The next GM.
36, right?
Yeah.
That's a future problem.
Right.
But if you have a chance to get Shohei Ohtani on your roster for his age 29, 30, 31, 32 years, you don't worry about what you're going to be paying him down the road. Yeah,
That's
Bobby
true.
Bonilla Day comes around,
Like
and
Bonilla Day, I
you
love
know,
that. That's in a couple days. He's about to
Ken
get paid
Griffey
again.
Jr. is still getting paid, and there are
Yeah.
guys that are going to be paid, for years and years and years after they're done, in contracts like the A-Rod contract that
Yeah.
was at the time was so huge. But those teams are all still there, right?
I'm still here.
I mean, you're still here. Good. That's
Say
good
get some
stuff.
water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Branded bottle. I like that. I like that when always for the brand. That's good.
Land news first, baby. Land news
but-
first, water. Best out there.
Oh, best. Oh, yeah. No, if you see that, you definitely got to pick up some ANF water. All right, let's go on.
All right,
We went off track a little bit there.
That's
but,
cool. That's-
always a good discussion.
That's
you
the
know.
best part about the show. We can go off track and it's all good, right? It's
Yeah.
like a regular news show. Hey, so let's stay with baseball for a second. So Domingo Germán last night, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correct.
Uh-huh.
Perfect game for the Yankees, man. I mean, just in 99 pitches, they win 11-0. We don't get a chance to see a lot of perfect games, but when we do, oftentimes it's a Yankee because they've had 4 perfect games.
Yeah. Go back,
just-
David Cone.
I remember David Cones.
the big lefty.
David Cone, and you have David Wells. It was
David
back-to-back
Wells.
years, 98 and 99.
Yeah. Rigetti on 4th of July against the Red Sox. I remember that as
Yeah.
a kid. So that's the thing about baseball too. You do remember these games. I mean, I remember seeing.
I think Don Larson's another
Was
guy for them.
Rigetti's just a no-hitter, or was that a perfect game?
It might have been no hitter. I think
Might-
Don Larson was the other perfect game for
Okay.
them.
Okay.
Outside of those guys.
Yeah.
Look.
So Rigetti's might have been yeah, but okay. So go ahead. Tell me more about Domingo.
No, I mean just 99 pitches. I mean, to me, that's kind of what made it so.
Yeah.
But I remember, look, I mean, last night I remember it was almost like an afterthought when I turned on TV and it was on. I remember when I was a kid, if a guy threw a perfect game, it was crazy. I mean, it was going to be everywhere. Look, I grew up a Cleveland Indians fan, well, Guardians now, but an Indians fan. I have yet to even see in my lifetime, well, I'm not going to say in my lifetime, I was going to say a no-hitter, but their last no-hitter was Lynn Barker in 1981, which was a perfect game.
Yeah, I remember
So
that one. Yep.
growing up as a fan of that team, I mean, there was so many close calls. I never had a chance to watch one. So to be a Yankees fan, and you've seen, at least in my lifetime, 3 perfect games. That's crazy. I mean, it's so special. It seems like it wouldn't be as hard as it is, but I mean, a perfect game is still just like,
Yeah,
crazy.
perfect game is statistically, one of the hardest things to achieve in all sports.
Yeah.
I think I was at a game though where something that was even more statistically improbable happened, which was 2 triple plays in the same game. But that's neither
That's
here nor
wild.
there. Yeah, that was wild.
That was a Red Sox
at-
game?
At Fenway, yeah. And they were both, since we're talking about it, 5-4-3 triple plays. So basically, runners on first and second, nobody out. ground ball to third, step on third, throw to second, throw to first, triple plays twice.
Wow.
In the game, yeah.
So it's funny you mentioned the Red Sox. So I remember when I was a kid, I had to be like 13 or 14 years old. Well, like I said, grew up an Indians fan. So I'm watching the Indians play the Red Sox, as a matter of fact, when Roger Clemens was there.
Yeah.
They played a doubleheader against the Red Sox, got 2 hits. I think they set the record for the least amount of hits in a doubleheader at that time. They got 2 hits, and they won one of the games.
Wow.
I think the first game, the Red Sox had a guy, I believe his name was Danny Young, and they made like 4 errors in that game. Indians won that game like 1-0 or 2-1 or something. And the very next game, Roger Clemens pitched the back end of the doubleheader, and he only gives up 2 hits, and the Red Sox win that game. So that's why it's so freaky when you think about a perfect game. That's why I can imagine that one organization like the Yankees. Well, I guess if there's going to be any organization that has games like this, is the Yankees, because they always have so many good players. But that's why I say this is just so difficult, because a lot of us who root for teams, we've never even seen a no-hitter, let alone a perfect game.
Yeah. Is it, Brett, is it Herman? Herman? Is that his name?
Yeah, Domingo Herman.
Yeah. The thing about it is he was pretty much trash in his last couple of starts. I remember he had pitched against the Red Sox and he wasn't good. He threw 2 innings, 7 runs. And then the next start, he was even worse. He was 3 1/3 and 10 runs, 8 earned against Seattle. So he had not been good. And then he comes out and he throws. Now, a lot of people will say, well, it's the A's. They haven't been as bad in the last month as they were in the first couple of months of the season, but they are still potentially historically bad ball club. Another thing that was interesting about this perfect game is that the Yankees scored 11 runs, which is a record number of runs for any perfect game. And if you think about it, makes sense, because when you start having those long innings, it gets harder and harder to come out as the pitcher and be sharp, especially now that a lot of times these guys don't go even when they're on 8 innings, or a complete game. So he has, prior to this start, he went 8 1/3, was his longest out of the season, which is pretty long, but he hadn't had a single outing aside from that one that was over 6 innings, 6 1/3. Yeah. So, it's rare to go complete game these days, but then to be able to throw a perfect game on a night when your team scores 11 runs, which means you're spending some considerable time on the bench, I think is really impressive.
Yeah, look, I mean, like I say, I just want to see my team throw 1 in my lifetime. Just give me a no-hitter. I just want to know.
Well, I mean, you're an Indians fan. I mean, sorry, Guardians.
Guardians
fan.
now.
So
look, and
this is the life of it. You're also a Browns fan,
right? Well, so before we jump to the NFL, one more quick baseball story. So this is to show you just how putrid the Indians organization was when I was growing up. So 1990, and I remember this very well. 1990. They're playing against the Yankees in Yankee Stadium, right? Mm-hmm. So the Indians, our pitcher at the time, a guy named Tom Candiotti, was a pitcher.
Knuckleballer.
Yep, knuckleballer. Had a no-hitter going into the 8th inning. Mm-hmm. Oscar Azokar for the Yankees gets a single, right? Now, mind you, the Indians are only up 1-0 in this game.
Okay.
Base hit, breaks up the no-hitter. They keep him in the game. Well, I don't know if no. They pulled him from the game. Brought in the relief pitcher, Doug Jones, who was one of the best closers in baseball at that time. Yeah. The very first pitch.
Was he a big mustache, maybe?
Mustache guy. Yeah. I actually met him later in his career, after his career. So he comes in to close the game out, and the very first pitch he throws ends up in the right field stands about 10,000 feet from home plate. Indians lose the game 2-1. I'm sorry. Yeah. So that just goes to show you right there what it is like to be a Cleveland sports fan, but whatever. So let's talk some NFL, and this is something we were talking about a lot yesterday. So the NFL bringing down the hammer on gambling, as 4 more guys are suspended for gambling, issues. And, man, I don't know where this is going, just because when you really look at it, I just think this is going to be a problem for the NFL moving forward. We talked a lot about it yesterday. I don't know what they're going to do about this.
Well, I think you can add MLB, and NBA, and NHL.
Just overall,
it's no surprise that ball players of any, athletes of any sport like to gamble. We've all heard the stories about the plane rides right?
Yeah.
And dominoes or spades or whatever it is, that's being played on the plane, there's usually some money exchanging hands. And now in a lot of states, it is really easy to just pick up your phone and make a quick parlay.
Right.
Can't do it here in Georgia. That's a whole other topic for another day.
For now.
But yeah, for now. But tip of the iceberg, I guess, would be what I would say. This is not just an NFL problem. This will eventually become a problem in a lot of other sports. The biggest scandal you could argue of, my youth and before some people were born or probably watching this was Pete Rose, and that was gambling, right? So, but now it's just going to become something that they're making an example out of the Isaiah Rodgers, is that his name?
So you got Isaiah Rodgers, you got Rashad Berry, you got Demetrius Taylor, and Nicholas Petit-Frere, who played for Ohio State Buckeye there.
Okay, well, that's about, that because he played for your team, but those are not household names in the NFL. One thing I did go back and look at, I like to do as much preparation as I can.
That's good.
Was I went back and I looked at that Hail Mary that the Texans had, or that 30-yard touchdown the Texans had to take to lose the number one pick in the draft. And I just wanted to make sure that defensive back Isaiah Rodgers was not on the coverage on that, because it went right through somebody's hands, and I was like, wait a minute.
I never thought about
that. If this
that.
was the dude who, who missed that, then we'd really have something.
You're right.
He was not on the field.
Yeah.
But anyway, the bottom line is this is something they're going to have to deal with, and hopefully by making an example out of these lesser-known guys, and maybe they are the only guys who are gambling on it, or at least the only ones they know about, that everyone else will fall in line and be like, all right, we just can't do this.
And that's my thought. What happens the first time like a star quarterback gets busted, or like a?
Well, we've already had it, Calvin Ridley, right? So.
Well, I mean, somebody who really has an impact. Like
Pat Mahomes?
A guy like I wasn't even going that high, but I mean like a starting quarterback, someone who's. I mean, to me,
we root for other AFC teams, so like
Joe Burrow or something.
Yeah, Joe Burrow. Yeah, well, I think he's a guy who might like to gamble a little bit.
Yeah, I mean,
right, but when it's a big guy, eventually it'll be a bigger name. And Calvin Ridley was a pretty big name, but eventually it'll be a bigger name than that.
Yeah.
And I also think, Scott, in all seriousness, it's a culture now. Right, so younger guys have the gambling's been legal for a few years as they've gone through their high school years, and I see this out of my kids as well, who are now adults and out of college. But both of them, it's super commonplace to just have a few bucks, and it's usually just a few bucks, riding on some games. Why not? It's an app on your phone, and it's it's a little more fun, I guess, than playing the stock market, and it's like I said, it can be a few bucks. It can be $5 to win 60 on a little parlay. So why not?
Hey, look, I just wonder, like I was brought up yesterday, I wonder if they're going to be able to keep all these rules so ironclad, right? I mean, I get it. You should not be able to bet on your team. You should not be able to bet on your sport, and I understand those reasons why.
Yeah.
But these guys who got suspended for, like I said, for Jamison Williams, who wasn't betting on his sport, wasn't betting on his team or his sport, and was in a locker room, and just because he placed a bet on the Detroit Lions team facility, he got suspended 6 games. Like, I just wonder, like, every rule, no matter what it is, kind of adjusts to society a little bit, right? Sort of adjust a little bit, at least to be able to fit. I just wonder, is suspensions like that. I just wonder after a while, like, okay, man, I mean, maybe we can loosen up on that one a little bit.
Let me explain it like this then. This is how I feel.
Yeah.
It's a rule for the job. Jobs have rules.
True.
Here, I can't, I have some nice suits. I couldn't go to my suit guy and be like, hey, listen, you give me the suits, and I'll every now and then I'll on a weather toss I'll just be like, hey, who made this suit, and I'll give you a shout out like that. It's called we can't take that sort of pay for play stuff here. It's in our contract. We can't do it.
Right.
So if you're an NFL player, one of the things you can't do is gamble. If you want to gamble that bad, if you want to bet on the NFL or on other sports that badly, then don't be an NFL player. I think that's pretty much what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're wrong, but I just
it's
wonder.
kind of like the John Morant with the gun. Like, if you if that's what you want to do, they're just workplace rules. They're not, really laws. They're just workplace rules. We all have them. We have to deal with them. And
haven't workplace rules changed over time at times to kind of fit just kind of where we're going as a world, as a society? I mean, true enough, there are rules that won't stick. You can't walk up to someone and punch them in the face, right? I mean, that's pretty much a universal rule. That's going to be a rule 20 years from now. But
right. So
I think other rules have changed, though.
Yeah, but while I agree with you with what you said about like really what's the harm of Jameson, Williams deciding he wants to put a few bucks or a lot of money on Scotty Scheffler to win the PGA Championship. It's a different sport. Like, who cares?
Right.
But it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
That's what the problem is. So I think that's why it will be an ironclad rule, because it just becomes too much of a slippery slope, and I don't know. Yeah, maybe eventually they could do it so it's like you can't bet on your sport.
Yeah, and
that would be the one that would make sense.
And will it be such an ironclad rule when you have younger, more progressive people getting older and becoming owners, becoming, people who are kind of from this generation when they move up? Commissioner, at some point he's not going to be the commissioner. Someone younger will move into that spot. Someone who maybe grew up in the era of being able to do these things a little more. Mm-hmm. I think that's what's going to happen for things to maybe change a little bit, because that's normally when rules change.
As a former younger, more progressive person, people change too when they get a little bit older. So
that's true.
I think they just need to protect the shield, protect the the brand as much as they possibly can, and the easiest way to do that is just to tell everybody in the league,
don't do it.
Can't gamble. End of story. And I don't think there's going to be a lot of guys that are lining up to be like, well, I was going to play in the NFL and make millions of dollars, but man, I just really want to gamble. And also, there's a lot of ways around it.
Right. Right.
If you were in the NFL, you could be like, hey, Fred, you want to go on that app, and here's
somebody do it for you.
Here's $1,000. Put it on this team. So
yeah, hey, look, I mean, I'm with you right there. So I mean, I think it's one of those things that's a totally avoidable punishment. So I guess word to the wise, because those two guys for the Colts got released too. So I mean, they lost their jobs because of it. And it's not really worth it. It's not worth it. Just follow your contract, right? So of course I call you Freddie Buckets for a reason, right? Because now it's time to talk. We saved the best for last. It's time to talk some basketball, and we are on the cusp of NBA free agency. To me, one of my most fun times per year, because, this is where you start to see maybe some balance shift in the NBA or whatever. Some of those things starting to fall into place right now already today. Are you just as fired up as I am about NBA free agency?
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's gotten a lot more interesting in the last 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
Right? Back to like when Durant was, leaving the Warriors. And so it's definitely gotten more interesting.
Yes.
Last couple of days trickling out, who's opting in, who's not getting, an offer, who's getting a guarantee, all that stuff. The big one today, I think, right?
James Harden,
opting in, but it's all done. These aren't really bombshells. I think it's just like Philadelphia. Today's the day it's announced, but Philadelphia is probably known for weeks that James was going to opt in, but wasn't going to play for Philadelphia. So now they're exploring trade options. Two of the teams that are apparently at the top of that list for trade options are the Clippers and the Suns, which I think is interesting.
The Suns?
Yeah.
Come on, man.
I don't know. But the Suns, also Kyrie Irving, free agent.
They're going to be hosting him tomorrow.
Announced that he's going to visit the Suns. Like, wait, haven't we seen Kyrie and KD together? And how'd that work?
Well, I think with Kyrie visiting the Suns, I think that's one of those things that might be a bargaining ploy, right? Because I wonder how willing the Dallas Mavericks are to be able to give Kyrie Irving a maximum contract. And like,
can the Suns even do it? I don't think they can. So I think it would have to be a sign and trade, with Dallas, which is where this all, because there's all these people working behind the scenes, with the GMs, working with the teams themselves, that when we get the news, it's like, oh, wow. but it's not as, oh, wow,
right?
Because the levers are being pulled behind the scenes.
Right.
And Dallas may be like, you know what? Maybe the sign and trade with Kyrie is the best thing because we're going to get this haul back from Phoenix.
They'll get DeAndre Ayton and some other guys probably if they do a sign and trade like that.
You don't get DeAndre Ayton. You take DeAndre Ayton.
Right. You'll take him.
There's a little difference.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think
you're just absorbing that contract and hoping, I guess.
Yeah, and hope that he somehow lives up to it and becomes the player that you hope he can be.
Supposed to be, yeah.
Look, I mean, and I think also with Kyrie too, it may be a little bit of a ploy because I don't know how willing the Dallas Mavericks are to give Kyrie a max contract, right? I mean, he hasn't exactly had the best history of living up to his contracts and being motivated to play on a regular basis. So I wonder if they're a little hesitant to give him that max contract, and might he be exploring his options a little bit, or at least trying to make them a little jealous, maybe trying to make them a little scared, because if they lose Kyrie in free agency, man, they got nothing because, I mean, they traded some things for him. And so if they just lose Kyrie Irving in free agency, they're kind of screwed. So I think Kyrie kind of playing that other chip against them, that's his other chip. I mean, he has somewhere like Phoenix where it makes a lot of sense for him to go there, just given the fact Durant's there. That's a team that's going to have a really good chance to win a championship.
But if he can only go there on a sign and trade, that's not leverage.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're kind of right.
So he needs to find another team who's willing to give him what the Mavericks will give him, or more than the Mavericks will give him. And then he needs to say, all right, listen, you do a sign and trade with Phoenix, or I'm just leaving and going to this team.
Well, it's only like 5 teams with money.
One of the things we have in common, Scott, is that we both have the Kyrie Irving experience.
We do.
With our franchises.
Yeah, the Celtics, yeah.
And we both know.
Our experience wasn't that bad.
Yours was actually pretty good at Cleveland. But it wasn't good at all in Boston. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. NBA free agency is a fun time. You start to it starts Friday afternoon, right? Tomorrow afternoon.
Right, but a lot of these things are falling into place now. Honestly,
yeah, so the Woj bombs and the Shams bombs. I mean, those start coming
throughout the night.
Throughout, they've already kind of been trickling in, the little ones, but then the bigger ones about like Jaylen Brown, Supermax. Like, is that going to happen? Like, there's stuff that will start to set that landscape for what the offseason looks like in the NBA. So, and I do think in general you have had more big shifts, right, that have happened than when we were younger. You didn't see the rapid team building and team changing that we get now.
That's what makes it fun, though, right? Look, I mean, the teams with the most cap money available are 5 teams who, quite frankly, no one would probably want to go to. You have the Rockets, Spurs, Magic, Thunder, and Pistons. Yeah. Maybe a guy like, there are a couple of free agents who I'm a little intrigued by to see where they want to go, and those are not 2 of the higher tier guys, but kind of higher tier, which is Kyle Kuzma and Fred VanVleet. To me, those are 2 guys that could maybe they could probably hit the jackpot going to one of those 5 teams because those teams are willing to spend whatever to get one of those kind of players. But I wonder what contending teams might look at a Kyle Kuzma. I mean, who had a pretty nice season last year for a bad team. VanVleet, I mean, to me, he's the most interesting one because that's a championship level player. But both those guys
I think he's a culture player too, right? So he's going to bring so Houston's an obvious destination for him, I think. They could use a guy like that. Ime Udoka could rely on him
for sure
a little bit. Now, Oklahoma City, you say people don't want to go there. I think if people don't want to go there, it might not be so much because of the roster. It might have a lot more to do with the Oklahoma City aspect of it. But that roster, I think, has an awful lot of potential. Yeah. They get Chet back this year. They have a good coach. So they're in pretty decent shape. But, yeah, it's not really a surprise. Like, when was the last time you saw the Lakers or the Celtics or the Sixers or one of those teams having, the most cap space?
Right, because generally speaking, you don't have a lot of cap space when you have a lot of good players, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, generally the teams with the most cap space are the teams that don't have a lot of good basketball players.
Right. Those teams that that I mentioned will just the marquee franchises, if you will, they will reset once every 10 years if they have to.
Yeah.
But other than that, for the most part, it's going to be the smaller market or, perennial, like the Orlando Magic seem to be a perennial,
team that's looking for some players.
Team that's looking for just somehow get the engine going.
So, we got to get out of here in a minute. So let me ask you real quick, what's on your mind real quickly?
Not much. Nice. Not much for me. Actually, locally, sports involved. Peachtree Road Race, Tuesday morning.
Nice.
Going to be not good. I'm not in great shape, and it's going to be like 75 and super muggy. So, but it's always a lot of fun. So definitely, looking forward to that. It's one of those things too. Logistically, it's not the best thing. You got to wake up real early, but it is kind of an iconic road race. So
that's cool.
What's on my mind.
Well, I guess I understand that's why you didn't come out and play basketball with us last Saturday, because you were saving yourself up for that, right?
That's right.
Well, thanks for watching Sports Tonight on a Thursday. We'll see you back here tomorrow night to talk a little bit more sports.
Cool.
Later.
See you, Scott.